Folks, it is a basketball episode, and what a basketball episode it is. It's the state of basketball in the mitten, excluding Michigan State. Sorry, that's not this podcast, but we're going to talk some Pistons. We're going to talk some Michigan basketball with Bryce Simon, co-host of the Pistons Pulse with Amari Sankofa, amazing podcast, and Game Theory with Sam Vecini, again, amazing podcast. Teacher, former D1 hooper, certified ball knower, and a man that knows his way around a well-manicured lawn. Bryce, thank you so much for taking the time today.
Listen, I know you're a real listener. Everybody kind of can do the father, the D1 hooper, the stuff, but if you know the lawn aspect of the Pistons Pulse, then I know you are a listener and viewer of the podcast over there. So thank you guys for having me. I'm super excited to be here and talk some hoops with you guys.
Yeah, this is great for us, man. Listeners of both podcasts, and honestly, like I only really support a few things in this world, like Jack's Link, beef jerky, and the Pistons Pulse and the Game Theory podcast. Like those are the only things I'll attach my name to. Definitely go check that out. The content over there. We're not going to get into all things Pistons, nor all things Michigan basketball, but if you want Pistons or NBA at large, they have got you covered over there. So with that being said, Andy, kick us off, my friend.
Yeah, man. So obviously having you on here and with your expertise, it's very easy to relate back to Michigan basketball in a sense. So we covered Michigan this past year and we covered them the year before, going from the doldrums of an 8-win season to a Sweet 16 run out of nowhere. You just covered the Pistons going from 14 wins to a first-round playoff appearance where they gave the Knicks everything they could handle and more. Can you describe the difference in your coverage this season versus last, as well as your just overall enjoyment and approach to the process of covering a competitive team compared to covering a floundering or quote unquote constantly rebuilding team?
Yeah, I mean, so a little bit peek behind the curtain for people that don't know. I started covering in terms of the podcast. I hesitate to say covering because I'm not a beat writer or something like that, right? Like, so that goes to my co-host, Amari Sankofa the second. Make sure you guys are checking him out on the Free Press. But I came and started doing this the same time he did, which was the start of the rebuild, or as Troy Weaver called it, the restoration. And so when I came aboard, that's all I knew was the Pistons essentially winning 20-ish games and then ending last season or 2 seasons ago now with the 14 wins. And so I didn't even know what I was watching. Like I would watch the playoffs and be like, oh, this is what competitive basketball is supposed to look like. Because I wasn't doing the NBA at large at that time because I hadn't joined Game Theory yet. So this season, even Omari would say is like, we're not searching for content. We're not searching for, the trade or how to improve the roster or whatever, or trying to do NBA draft stuff with 30 games left to go in the season. We're just talking basketball all year long, evaluating and discussing and analyzing the games, which is what I love to do. I love to nerd out on that type of stuff. So that's where my enjoyment came from, Andy, was just watching a game, analyzing it, watching 3 or 4 in a week, and then going on the podcast and talking about it. And that's all we had to worry about, was just talking about the games that happened during the past week.
Man, and couldn't agree more with you there. The 8-win season, we were searching for content. It's like already looking ahead to next season, and the season is still going on. It's just not what I would prefer. Give me competitive winning basketball at any point. Speaking of competitive winning basketball, Detroit, hell of a season, tripled their win total there, and some incredible individual performances. There is, as I'm sure you've heard, kind of a notion around Detroit that it is Detroit versus everybody.
Yep.
May have had a leg to stand on there. Where do you believe the Pistons were most shafted when it comes to awards and recognition for this season? Is it the Cade third team, the Beasley sixth man, or JB coach of the year?
Ooh, this is a good one. Okay, no disrespect to Malik Beasley, but I don't think I'm going to go there. And I will be the first, I think Malik Beasley had a historic 3-point shooting season. I don't think it's talked about enough in terms of the volume, the makes, the percentage, the usage, what he meant to this team. So, no slight to Malik Beasley here. Okay, I'm going to go Cade just because, I do these things, and I tried to be, non-homer whenever I was doing mine and putting mine together. I couldn't get him not on second team, guys. And even Sam Vecini over at Game Theory had him very strongly on his second team. If he may have even given him his first team nod, his 5th spot on first team. And so I'm going to go with Cade here. JB, I thought, was coach of the year as well. I would have made that argument. I understand why people went with Kenny Atkinson. And I do want to point out, I know the Cavs fizzled out in the playoffs. It is a regular season award. I don't hold what happened in the playoffs against Kenny Atkinson. They did have a tremendous season. But my thing is, like, JB took a 14-win team and turned the culture around. Like, that's what's more impressive to me than the actual win total, guys, is the culture and how we saw this team play and respond and grow and improve. But I thought Cade Cunningham was second team All-NBA. I'm not surprised he didn't because of Detroit versus everybody, but I'll go with that one. I thought he got the biggest slight.
Now, recently I heard you on Game Theory with Sam Vecini. Great pod. Everybody go listen to it. Talking about the Pistons next year. And I know, like, we're still talking about them getting shafted from the previous year, but I mean, I think after the sweat dried after Game 6, Jared was texting me like, all right, next year, here's the moves I'm leaning. And then I was in Canada last week, and Jared's like, I know what I'm going to do with the Pistons now, and just keeps sending me these thoughts. And are we all kind of thinking that the Pistons kind of run it back with what they have because of the sample size last year with the 30 games of the defensive just analysis of Jalen Duren with Jaden Ivey's injury? Do you think that's what they do?
So that's the camp I'm in, guys. There's a couple players that I don't think are on the market that if Detroit wanted to make a bigger swing, I would be comfortable with. But because I don't think they're truly on the market, I think you'd be paying a premium that I really wouldn't want Detroit to pay right now. And I think when I say run it back, I'm a little bit more okay with, hey, is there a Jake LaRavia? Is there a Sam Merrill? Is there a Nickeil Alexander-Walker? Is there an Al Horford? You know, I'm just throwing out names and options of guys like, okay, maybe these guys settle in to give you a little bit something different in the rotation. But in general, you run it back with the same idea of a roster. You get Jaden Ivey back in the rotation. You get Asar Thompson with an actual offseason to work on his game. You get Ron Holland in year 2, another year with JB. And you wait at least until the deadline to make a quote-unquote big move. I will be the first one to admit, I think this team's biggest need to take the next step is a true number 2 option. Yeah. Cade Cunningham is the face of the franchise. I think Cade Cunningham is a number 1 best player option on a real title contending team. They have to find a number 2. Why I want to slow play that is, I don't want to go make that move, trade future draft capital or whatever, if that player is already on the roster, right? Like, can any of us say 100% certainty that that player is not on the roster? If you can say it with 100% certainty, then go make the trade. But if you can't, you wait at least 50 games and get some more data on that.
I feel like that idea is even more prevalent now because of the SGA getting traded for Paul George and what SGA became with the Thunder.
And even Tyrese, right? Like Sam has made this point multiple times about how those two teams were kind of started in terms of their creation of the iterations we are seeing now. And both were trades in terms of SGA coming to OKC, Tyrese coming to Indiana. And so, like, it's just, maybe I'm a little bit hesitant here. I understand that I'm not as aggressive as maybe other people are. I need a little bit more data collection. That was my phrase last year, was data collection. I will take 50 more games of data collection before I make any sort of big decision like that.
And I think that makes total sense. I'm in the same boat. So we're all pretty much on the same page there. I loved your idea of like a Schroeder sign and trade for PJ Washington that you threw out, something like that, more along the margins than a big shakeup there. And part of that is Jaden Ivey, limited sample. We need more data points there because I was extremely impressed with what I saw. And if that guy's going to shoot 41% from 3 for an entire season, the second best player is very likely on the roster already. So last year, I identified Ivey's 3-point shooting as the biggest key to the Pistons' growth. I was arguably incorrect because they took a massive leap without him. But what would you say of the young guys? What kind of internal development, maybe it's one key aspect of one player's game, do you think makes the biggest difference? Is it rim protection from Duren? Oh. Is it, you could just say a full season of Ivey at that level is enough. So where do you see the biggest thing internally for Pistons growth?
Yeah, that's a really fun question. By the way, if you want to go win some money off some general NBA fans, I bet you could if you asked them to bet the over-under on Jaden Ivey's three-point percentage last season. And my guess is most of them would take under 40% if you threw that number out, and then you can win yourself a little bit of money. Not that I promote betting or whatever. I'm going to
Sponsored by
Vegas.
FanDuel.
Yeah, okay. I definitely promote betting then. Okay. So I feel pretty comfortable about knowing who Jalen Duren is and kind of his path to things. I feel pretty comfortable with the SAR. Like if I had to give somebody one thing, it would be a SAR, a jump shot, and then just like, okay, we're good, right?
Yeah.
I don't
And no blood clots.
Yes, exactly. I
Yeah.
think with the SAR, I just don't believe that the jumper is going to get there in the next couple of years. So to
Me
me,
neither.
it really comes down to Ivy and actually Holland in terms of can either of them grow to the point where you have faith in them being what we just talked about, that number 2 option? Can we get 65, 70 games of Ivy averaging almost 20 a game, shooting at least 38% from 3, and or can we get two-way wing Ron Holland that takes a step forward that makes you go, man, maybe some of those Jaylen Brown comps pre-draft, which everybody would admit, like that was a very high-end ceiling with not a super high percentage chance of actually hitting them. But you know what? Maybe that is there. Maybe our percentage chance of him hitting that is a little bit higher, and you see that growth. So those are the two guys I'm really looking at next season, I think, guys. Again, I have a pretty good feel for who Jalen Duren is. I have a pretty good feel for what Asar Thompson is going to be, even if he's not there yet. J.I. and Holland are the two guys where I'm like, there's still some ceiling there that I don't know that I would bet a ton of money on, but I'm interested to see, and I think we'll be able to tell with how they play the first 40 games if they've taken steps towards that direction.
Am I foolish for still really believing in Jalen Duren, who is younger than Asar Thompson, and in the final 3 games of the Knicks series, just like completely won me over? Like, I mean, I know it's a smaller sample size, but he looked awesome in those last 3 games.
No, I don't think so, Andy. Like when I say I think I know who Jalen Duren is, I don't mean it as a slight by any means. It's just like, I think what we've seen offensively in terms of the rim, lob threat, all of that stuff is not going to go away, right? We've seen the potential passing and being able to initiate offense from the top of the key. I think defensively he took steps. Like, I guess maybe that's where some people would push back to me. I know he is young, and I know he's had 3 coaches in 3 years, which is a huge talking point when you talk about Duren and Ivy. But I don't think he's ever going to be like Ivica Zubac defensively, or Brook Lopez or something like that. Maybe a little bit more growth defensively, another step like we saw this past season. It wasn't necessarily a slight at Duren. It's just like, I don't think Duren ever becomes a number 2 option offensively, right? Like, I think I've given up on the stretch the floor, shot making potential, stuff like that. Maybe a mid-range jumper eventually. But like, that's all I meant in that context. But I understand people who are excited about Jalen Duren. My one caveat is always like, these guys are extension eligible. What's the number? How much do you want to pay centers? Is it better to go with a collective group of 3 that have, contrasting skill sets so you can go to different options? And I will throw this out, and I always get pushback, and I'm okay with it. I still want to see him and Asar not occupy the same space offensively in terms of 2 non-shooters. And so I always throw that caveat, not saying it can't work, just saying I think it's a consideration.
No, I agree. And it's not the player necessarily, because I think Jalen Duren could have an awesome career and be a double-double machine. It's just more the archetype. And like, are you going to pay that guy versus, like I said, if Jaden Ivey is shooting like that around Cade with that ability to go like slow you down his own pace, Cade Cunningham, and then alternate with supercharged Jaden Ivey, I'm just very interested by that. And like, while a lob threat in Jalen Duren is incredibly effective, like how great would a stretch 5 be, or like an elite rim defending 5? So it's an interesting conversation there. Last Pistons question, because we want to get some Yaxel, we want to get some Danny Wolf and Vlad Golden in here. This Pistons team this year had an identity, and some of this goes into like, which of the young guys do you think stick around for the long haul? When this team wins big next, what is the identity of this Pistons team? Are they winning with defense like the Thunder? Are they winning with depth and ball movement like the Pacers? Is it something in between? Is it more heliocentric? How do you see that vision?
Yeah, that's a great question. I do think defensively is always going to be an identity, at least in the JB era. And that's what's interesting, right? Is JB got fired not because he was a bad coach, guys. JB got fired because he couldn't take the Cavs theoretically to the next level in the playoffs. And that was my argument whenever he got hired by the Pistons was if JB is in Detroit for 4 years, gets him to the playoffs, and I wasn't thinking year one, by the way, like he's already exceeded those expectations. Right. But I said he gets the Pistons to the playoffs in back-to-back years and then gets fired because they need somebody else to take him to the next round or the conference finals. We should throw a parade for JB Bickerstaff. Like, and I'm being in all seriousness, guy. You know, like I know it's funny, but like
statue,
for
real. Like he took the 14-win, awful culture, like no faith, hope in where the direction of this organization was going, and gets him to the playoffs. I'll take that. That was worth every penny that they paid him and all of that. Now, I hope for JB's sake that that's not what happens, that he's the guy. My point was, if JB is still the coach, I think it will be on a defensive identity. And then offensively, it's built around Cade and floor spacing. I just give that caveat because when you say like title contender, Jared, if it's a different coach, that identity could shift, right? Like it could end up being something else. And I also give the caveat, we've only gotten like 12 months of Trajan Langdon roster decisions. Yeah. And the only big cues I've got off of it is when he signs veterans, he wants ones that are available and space the floor. Like that was the consistent message between Tobias, Malik, Tim Hardaway Jr., and Dennis Schroeder to an extent. Like he doesn't space the floor, but we know he brings gravity offensively. And those guys were available. They're veterans that played consistently a lot of games. And I'm interested now with another draft pick, another offseason. I think we get to start to see another and more vision of what Trajan has for this organization moving forward.
Whose kids do I have to kidnap to get Derek White to Detroit?
Listen.
I'm in.
He's the perfect Piston.
So he's perfect next to Cade.
Yes.
Is what I love. Like that. Here's what I will say about Derek White. I love the idea that people, I don't think that's the Celtic that's getting traded this offseason.
I don't think so either.
No.
Drew. I feel bad. I continue to mention game theory. I apologize, guys. I know it's annoying.
No, you're fine.
No,
I will say, go over to the YouTube channel, and we have off-season previews for all 30 teams. Eventually, it's not quite there yet. It's getting close. The Pistons one is leading in view, so go watch and keep above the Rockets there. And
I didn't go Detroit.
The Blazers, a couple other. Yeah, the Detroit fan base is incredible.
Show out, man.
But on the Celtics one, what we talked about was we think it's Drew. We think it's Kristaps. Maybe Sam Hauser, depending on like aprons and cost cutting and stuff like that. If I'm Boston, Derek White is not getting traded because I may be taking a 1-year hiatus here to get Jason Tatum healthy. And then I'm going for it in 26-27 again. And I want Derek White on my roster. And so that's where I agree with you, Andy. I don't think that Boston is moving Derek White, though.
I will kidnap somebody if I have to.
You were going to do that anyway.
I was going to do it. I'm going to get the job done for Detroit. Shifting gears a little bit. Yaxel Lindeborg was a guy we were looking at a few weeks ago as a potential Pistons target, and now he's going to be a clear focal point for the Wolverines next year. What kind of production do you anticipate from him against tougher competition in the Big Ten?
Oh, yeah, Yaxel's good, guys. I don't expect him to like come in and have any issues. He's a 22-year-old. He'll be 23 by the time the college season starts next year. So I'm sure most Michigan fans know this by now, but in case new listeners or whatever, he started out at Arizona Western. He's been at UAB the last couple years. I actually got put on him by people 2 years ago with Yaxel. So I've been watching him last season. Almost 18 points, 11 rebounds, 4 assists,
That's
and
crazy.
3.5 stocks on 52, 36, 76. This dude is going to be productive because he is a man and he is built like a man. And so it's not going to be coming into the conference and like having issues physically or something like that, right? Like we're not talking about, with all due respect, a freshman that had a big year in one of these conferences and is then transferring up and may take a year to adjust to all of this. Yaxel Lindeborg, like if he comes in and averages similar numbers, I will not be surprised. Like I expect him to average a double-double. I expect him to average a lot of assists, because one thing we saw last year with Michigan, they will run creative stuff. They will let their bigger players operate offense in a Danny Wolf. I'm not saying Yaxel is the passer that Danny Wolf was, but like, he has the ability to be, I call them advantage exploiters, guys that can knock down shots, that can attack a closeout, that can make the necessary passes. And that's what he can do. He has great size. He's powerful. And again, it's just like, he does all of these things. The rim finishing, it was exciting. 63% at the half court at the rim is a good number. It's just, he's a really good player. The rebounding, stocks, assist to turnover ratio. Listen, I had Yaxel late first, top of the second. You mentioned potentially a Pistons target. This is a great get for the University of Michigan in terms of a transfer of this caliber.
Kind of adjust my pants after that one.
So this guy's 6'9", 230. Last year, 36% from three. Michigan, we're not going to go too much into who's on the roster there, but Andy and I are a little dubious of what they bring shot creation-wise after losing Trey Donaldson, and we replace him with Elliot Cadeau from North Carolina and sophomore LJ Kaysen, neither of which are necessarily going to like set the table too much. So you were kind of talking about the on-ball stuff there, like, can this guy be the hub of an offense? Can he get his own enough to run an offense? Or does it kind of have to be, like you were mentioning, like getting creative, and which we definitely saw that this Michigan team is capable of doing?
No, I think, I mean, the creativity for sure, but I think this is your best player. This is the hub of what you do. Like, when, Michigan is setting out, like, how are we going to build out our offense? Where are we going to, like, starting with the actual makes sense. I'll just like give you some synergy stuff here. Spot ups, he was good. Offensive rebounds, obviously. Transition, excellent. Post ups, very good. Isolations was average. So maybe not something where you just give him the ball in true isolation from the perimeter, but if you want to throw it to him with his back to the basket a little bit, cuts though, he was good. So you do want to play him off the ball as well and just allow him to show that overall versatility of his game. Through almost 4 offensive rebounds per game. I mentioned the overall rebounding stats, but nice. Offensive rebounding is just a crazy number for him. So I think he's really good. I do think you would want like table setters so you can use him in a variety of ways. I don't think you just want to throw it to him and just let him go to work and face up isolation. But I do think he has the ability to be that best player, go get 15 to 20 points a game, even at the level of Michigan.
Yeah, and we're about to talk some Danny Wolf and Vlad Golden here, and I loved Danny Wolf offensively. Defensively, sometimes left things to be desired. I'm pretty excited by what I saw from Yaxel defensively. Can you kind of talk about what he brings on that end, what you expect from him as like a two-way player?
Yeah, I mean, it starts with the disruption numbers that I mentioned at the top, right? And so, I mean, you're talking, 6'9", 7'4" wingspan, I think is what it had it at. He's very active in that regards. And so that's sometimes you hear about length and wingspan and stuff like that. And then you watch players and they play with their hands down to their sides all the time. Niederhauser from Penn State is a player in this draft that I've made that note of. Like, he's getting a lot of love right now about his wingspan and his athleticism and all of those things. It's like, well, that's all great, but you have to utilize it in the correct way. And I think Yaxel does a really nice job of that. He's a really good communicator defensively as well. And so I think all of those things contribute to him just being a very good cog and a disruptive cog on a defensive scheme. And so I think in that way, he is a two-way impact at the college level.
And I think he's a good fit with Dusty May as a head coach, who's going to find out his strengths and kind of change his system to fit him. He's a really malleable head coach, which I like. And there's a lot of differences in college schemes and pro schemes, but I can only imagine when you're scouting college players and some of the systems you see, you're like, is this a system? Where is the spacing? Why are there 3 people standing at the foul line and things like that? So I think Dusty May is going to be kind of like a hand in glove to really get the most out of Yaxel's versatile skill set.
That's what it's always super important with that stuff. You see these players with, like you said, interesting skill sets, and it's like, okay, well, you can't go somewhere and play where there's a rigid idea of what players should look like, that this player's a 5 and this, and there's nothing wrong with that, right? Some coaches can win with that stuff, and I'm not critiquing it. There's so many different ways to win in the game of basketball at every level. But if you're going to bring in a player like Yaxel, who is versatile and has this, skill set to do different things, then you better be a coach and a coaching staff that can use all of those to your advantage and be creative with the overall roster, offensive scheme, defensive scheme, all of that.
I mean, very similar to what we saw last year with Danny Wolf, or as we like to call him on this podcast, Dan Wolf, because he plays like Wolf. A man. he and Vlad Golden. But Dan Wolf last year was really that queen chessboard type piece and drove the offense and made the team extremely difficult to defend. What do you think his role is at the next level? Is it similar to like a Chet and Hartenstein where he needs to play with another big to complement some of his deficiencies? And does he need to be in a specific type of situation to succeed?
It's really funny because we just talked about this, right? So I will just read the top of my notes. This versatile two-way front court player is how I peg Danny Wolf. The measurements, all of that. And then I put, you have to get him on a team that will be creative with the way they use him. He is a very creative player. And so, like, again, you're going to send him to the Knicks where, like, well, I guess maybe now, like,
now
Thibodeau's not there anymore. So maybe that will work depending on who they hire. But you know what I mean? Like, you got to go somewhere where it's going to be like, hey, we may put the ball in this guy's hands and let him operate a ball screen every once in a while. And then the next time we're going to use him as the ghost screener. And the next time we're going to space him in the corner. We're going to like, you can't send him to a team that's not going to let him grab and go, right? Or I don't know, maybe you guys disagree. Maybe you saw enough turnovers this year where you're like, nope, take all of that out of his game. My thing is, if you don't believe in Danny Wolf's ability to kind of give you all of these different things, then I'm not sure he's a player you're super excited about. Because to me, the pitch is, hey, as a 4/5, whatever he ends up being, a big, right? He's going to space the floor a little bit. He's going to be able to attack closeouts. He's going to be able to grab and go. You're going to be able to use him as a pick and pop and the pick and roll handler and do these creative things that we saw Dusty May do with him and Vlad Golden. If you don't believe in his ability to do that, then I wouldn't draft him. But if you do, those are the ways you're going to use him in a very creative manner, probably in a second unit against other teams' second units.
Yeah, that's a great point there. And I like that you said 4 or 5. It's not that you have to come in and play this guy as a traditional 5 because you're probably not going to love those minutes. The
Agreed.
Comp that we brought up on our pod after a night of watching him be not very physical, I was like, man, what would Tim Hardaway do putting his shoulder into this guy? Like, I think he's going to be able to move him. Like, physical vets that are much smaller are probably going to be able to move him. And obviously mentioned Tim Hardaway because beloved Wolverine, shout out. But so paired with another big is another great way to utilize him. I kind of believe in him being like second unit creator, like you mentioned. So are there any team fits that you like right now? I know we've got some trades that could come out and change all of this, but anyone that you're eyeing?
So I have him right now in my tier that goes like 9 to 22, which is a very big tier, but it's essentially my guys that I'm like, these are guys I feel very confident in being first round picks. I think the most recent podcast, we actually drafted him to Minnesota at 17, which I very smartly, of course, because nobody else could see it, said that the Timberwolves' ability to sell Danny Wolf Timberwolves t-shirts would go over very well. And, so because of course
hand in glove.
Yes, nobody else would have seen that coming. So I do like that depending on what they do with Julius and Naz Reid in terms of like, hey, if one of those guys is gone, let's say they let Julius walk or whatever, and they move Naz into the starting lineup, maybe Danny could then fall into the Naz Reid role. Or if they sign and trade Naz Reid or let him walk, maybe Detroit Pistons. By the way, I will have a kind of a video breakdown over on the Substack of Naz Reid coming out on Thursday, I believe. I'm looking at some offseason potential players for Detroit. Maybe he fits into that position, right? So that was a team there. Utah would be interesting for him. I mean, Oklahoma City, obviously, but the problem with Oklahoma City is then he never gets on the floor because they have like 17 dudes already that can play for them. So that's kind of the range for me with Danny Wolf, though.
Think you could be a Spur or Jared, cover your ears, a Pacer?
No.
Why not, Jared? Why not?
I look, I'm old school. I've been watching since Malice in the Palace. Like Pistons Pacers to me is a rivalry.
Okay,
and like
I got you.
If the Ohio State Buckeyes and the Pacers won in the same year, I'm walking off a bridge. I'm not doing I mean, I respect the hell out of the Pacers, though. That's the thing. Is like you can't not respect the way this team was built, and it bodes well. Not to get on a Pacers rant here, but it bodes well for the Pistons if that team can be competitive with how they were built. But
so I
digress.
will say that's an interesting name though, Andy. Indiana, because their big man position will be interesting. Miles Turner's an unrestricted free agent. They don't have a backup true center on the roster. Obviously, we know they would be willing to play small if they needed to, so he could play some of those minutes at the 5. Their pace would fit into like, hey, Danny, grab and go and get out and run. So that is an interesting name with the Pacers.
It's just you feel the run and gun style and stuff they're doing there, and it's like, oh man,
it'd be awesome.
Anytime I say something good about the Pacers, I'm just like, Jared, I'm very sorry about this. Switching over to the other Michigan player that's been talked about a lot in the draft, Vlad Golden. He feels like he's really going to benefit from the league kind of ebbing back towards traditional big men. Does he have the talent, do you think, to crack a rotation and find a role in one of these teams? I mean, it feels like big men are kind of at a premium right now.
Yeah, I think the other thing Golden benefits from, I mean, along with being a good basketball player, I don't want to take anything away from him, is the NIL era of college basketball. There was a lot of players ahead of him on my personal big board that ended up going back to college that I think in pre-NIL era may have stayed in the draft and been like, you know what, maybe I'm a first round pick, maybe not. I don't have a guarantee, but I'll go ahead and stay in. I have Golden in my top 60, guys. I have him in my tier of players that's like, this is a strong second round pick. This is a guy that I think should get drafted. And so, again, I will just read off my notes here. Good hands, touch, passing, not a crazy defensive disruptor, not a floor spacer, those things. Legit size, not crazy athlete, but okay, what does he? I'm interested to see offensively what it brings, but I do think he's a good positional defender, has the soft touch around the rim, and I think he can end up being a high-level third center for a team. Now, before people are like, oh, that's some like slight, I think the third center role on a team is very important. So I want to make that clear. I was literally talking to somebody that does Cavs content creation the other day. And obviously their starting center is Jarrett Allen, and essentially their backup center is Evan Mobley, but they still need a third center. And he was asking me for names. And I said, oh, Vlad Golden is perfect. Like, because I think he's going to be able to come in and be that solid third center right away because he is an older prospect. So I do think a team will see him as value. Mid to late second round is where I would be more comfortable, but I've seen him higher on boards, guys. I've seen him like in the first round on people's boards. I'm not there, but I see some value with him as that third center coming in. And again, that is a role that I do think is important.
Yeah. Tony Bradley's playing in the finals.
And killing it, honestly. No, all great points there. And a lot of that physicality that we mentioned Dan Wolf not having, Vlad oftentimes brought it, particularly on that Sweet 16 run. And I think you said the word in there, like solid. I feel comfortable with what I watched. Like, okay, if Luka Garza can get minutes, different type of player, but I think Vlad Golden could get minutes. But on the Luka Garza comparison there, Vlad started to like let it fly a couple times from three, and it looked okay. Like it didn't look like a shot like that was completely broken. Is that something that he tries to develop, or would not even any point because you're never going to get those shots unless you're getting blown out by 30?
So my thing is like, I think I'm different than a lot of people. I always think these players should be looking to expand their game in some way, right? Like, I mean, obviously he should be focusing on, okay, be a great screen setter, be a great positional offensive rebounder, be a great positional defensive player in ball screens, make sure you have good hand activity and all of those things. But I mean, this is his job now, right? He's not in college taking classes anymore. Like this is, I mean, I guess it was kind of his job because they're getting paid so much. I missed out on that whenever I was in college.
Seriously.
Came about 22 years early and was not good enough to actually make real NIL money either. But it's like, I don't want to put these guys in boxes. You know what I mean? It's like, work on that jumper, and because that might keep you around. I mean, if that's the separator, then absolutely. So, 73% from the free throw line. He got better every year from the free throw line. As you mentioned, made 11 threes this last season. It's absolutely something he should be working out. Like, I don't think if he gets a chance with his NBA team, come in and just start letting it fly the first day of practice, but especially if he ends up in the G League, if he's a two-way guy or something like that. That's what the G League is for, in my opinion, is not necessarily what these guys are already good at, but helping them develop the aspect of their game that makes them a real NBA player.
I feel like he's destined to be drafted by the Lakers and then packaged in a trade that when LeBron ships him off to Timbuktu or somewhere to just toil away for a while.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, they could use a center though. Like they
Yeah.
need some depth out there as well. And so like that's not a bad spot for him. You know, the Clippers, like I mean, you start at 49. I mean, honestly, Milwaukee at 47. Who knows what that roster looks like? You know, Zach Edey the other day, you know, all of a sudden is starting the year on the injured with the ankle surgery or whatever. Cleveland has 2 picks starting at 49. The Knicks could use center depth. The Clippers could use center depth. The Suns could definitely use center depth. The Jazz, we mentioned the Pacers, the Lakers. Like, I just think this is assuming he lasted this range, there's a lot of teams in this range I can make an argument that would really make sense for Vlad Golden.
God, I would love him on the Clippers. Oh, yeah. That would be a lot of fun.
Backing up Zubac. That's a lot of beef down there.
That's a lot of beef.
Yeah, I kind of like that. Yeah.
Bryce, we want to be just cognizant of your time, and we have one last question. Trying to gauge the temperature around the league, where he is at this time, because often Jared and I kind of feel like Jon Snow before the Battle of the Bastards defending him. How do we feel about Franz Wagner right now?
Great.
I feel like he's taking on some water because of the shooting,
the shot,
with the Magic, and like I know
the shot and the contract.
The shot and the contract. I feel like he's been bitten by the injury bug a little bit. That whole team has, for God's sakes. But like, how do you feel about him like going forward and the Magic as a whole? Because I mean, they're kind of like Michigan's Southeast with the Jet Howards and both Wagner brothers.
I mean, guys, Franz averaged 24. 5.5, 4.5, and I'm rounding down on those second numbers while only shooting 30% from 3. And then in the playoffs, he averaged 26, 5, and 5.5 while shooting worse from 3. Like, I will readily admit, like, the 3-point shooting is scary. It makes me nervous. It really does.
Yeah.
I think it's made worse because the rest of that team can't shoot threes either and doesn't have a lot of that in their game. If it's him and Paulo as the number 1 and number 2, and then you have real floor spacing around him, I don't think we talk about it as much in terms of hurting the team as a whole. Now, for him to reach his ceiling as a potential all-star, all-NBA level type of player, then sure, it has to get there. I don't disagree with that. Franz Wagner is awesome, and he's a two-way player, and he's one of the craftiest finishers in the paint that you will watch on a night-in, night-out basis. And so, ceiling wise, sure, I have some concerns. It's still a pretty good situation to average 25 a game in the regular season and playoffs while you're going through that. Now, the worry is, like, I've heard that he's always tinkering with his mechanics, and it shows up this way one game and that way 20 games later and that way, 6 months later. It's a concern to me that he's not like just honing in, but maybe that will be figured out this offseason. But he's still an extremely, extremely talented and good NBA basketball player, even if the jumper doesn't get there to the level that would let him reach his ultimate ceiling as a player.
I'm going to play that response as I go to sleep tonight.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we're on the same life raft there, gentlemen. And I think it'll swing back. The numbers were great this year. He was awesome for Germany too. And like the Olympics too. Like he's the focal point of that team. Bryce, thank you so much for this, man. We are genuine fans of all of your podcasts, all of your work. I'm on the Substack, but shout it out. I know we've mentioned it a couple times. Where can the people find your stuff?
Yeah, at Motor City Hoops on Twitter, on Blue Sky, and then the Substack. So I've started a 2025 Pistons like draft prospect video breakdown series. So just video breakdowns of players in their range or potential trade up prospects. And then starting Wednesday with Jake LaRavia, I'm looking at Pistons potential offseason acquisition. So I'm not talking about the mechanics to get them on the roster or their fit or the likelihood. It's just names of players that people like us are talking about this offseason. Jake LaRavia, Naz Reid, Sam Merrill, eventually Nickeil Alexander-Walker, etc. I'll get to as many as I can throughout the rest of the month. So that's the Motor City Hoops Substack. And guys, it's completely free. So subscribe. It will never cost you a dime. I promise it's never going to change that way. The Pistons Pulse podcast with Amari Sankofa II, and then Game Theory podcast with Sam Vecini.
Bryce Simon, a good human, a good hang, good at his job. We appreciate this,
and
sir.
a good lawn, Jared. Please bring that back as well.
and a hell of a lawn.
The thing I'm most proud of is my lawn.
Well manicured at all times. Bryce, thank you very much, sir. Appreciate it.
Thanks, guys.